Good morning, everyone. I just want to give a quick presentation, and if I can just make one point in this presentation, that would probably be enough in 15 minutes. And it's that if you create simple content, build courses in the form of simple courses, you can use them in lots of different ways. This is the project that a lot of this material came out of, but a lot of us who were working on the project had these ideas before that. So really, I just want to give some credit to that. So, why do universities spend so much on massive open online courses? Is it for quality of learning? Is that why they spend all the money? Is it for their reputation? When you come down to it, really, they're really quite simple courses, a lot of them, and the money being spent is more in production value. So it's about that they don't want to damage their reputation. You can achieve a lot with less. And because they spend so much money, you would imagine that, well, these are not going to be suitable for smaller target audiences, for the niche that I'm involved in. But if we don't take those high production approaches, I mean, we need to take those? Those high production are actually quite simple in terms of pedagogy, but people quite like them. So simple pedagogy goes a long way. I think maybe this was proved originally, and to some extent it inspired me, was what Salman Khan did in mathematics for high school students from his closet. Basically, he really just taught like a normal teacher would teach with a blackboard, and we can do that with various tools like graphics tablets. One of the simplest tools down in the bottom right there, which is really just a visualizer, which you can put a piece of paper on and you can draw on it. So it's you don't really need these high production values, and you can create some very effective teaching materials very simply. Okay, this is an idea that I always like to use. That we can get this concept that there are diminishing returns in our efforts in teaching. Basically, if we know what we're doing, if we have some experience, that basic 20% of our effort will get most of the results. After that, it's hard work. And what I'm saying is that the same goes for creating online content. We can get 80%, achieve 80% of what we want with a lot less effort. Okay, these are some of the principles that we would have put out in that course, just to give you an idea that it's about real learning. It's not about flashy stuff. Some things you just can't do. Just let them go. There's lots of free materials out there. We use that. When it comes to video content, just use simple graphics. Don't go for anything fancy. Very important to have good microphone, but that's very cheap. Minimize editing. In other words, tolerate that this will be at a lower quality. Prepare quite well, just record it and leave it at that. If you do want to do editing, you can leave clues and do simple editing. Probably best not to. So short pre-recorded videos, or if you're in a classroom, just record what you're doing in the classroom. That can be an even simpler way of doing it. Okay, so what I've done now is what I want to talk about is how, if we have this content, we can do different modes of learning. So very quickly, I'm going to use a mind map that I created just maybe to illustrate. It might work better than PowerPoint. Let's see if I can get out of here. Okay, and the mind map is here. Okay, so let's just quickly look at content. I mentioned it a minute ago. So I'd break down looking at content into what types of content do you need to develop and where are you going to get these content. So under types, we'll say you have learning materials, you will have assessment, and I'm sort of including this. This doesn't relate to a lot of people, but in my own area, which is engineering and physics, labs are very important as well. So let's just look at the learning materials, almost like the theory, as it were. Okay, so you can purchase multimedia courseware if you're lucky, but it's generally only available for common stuff. Or you can create multimedia courseware, which is sort of interactive materials, actually quite difficult to develop. Same, you can create videos, you can create documents. In fact, documents tend to take longer than videos to produce in actual fact if you're doing simple. But there's lots of documents out there, and you may already have ones of your own, and there's lots of them. So that last one there, link to web resources. In other words, get out and find stuff. There's lots of good stuff out there. So those are the types of learning materials. Assessment, I won't dwell on assessment, except maybe to say that some assessments are highly reusable, and I would say quizzes are very useful. I know they don't necessarily test in depth, although a lot of colleagues of mine have experimented with parametric quiz systems like Wirus, where they can put in mathematical calculations and then change the variables so that the student can practice over and over again. Also assignments that they can do. You can, pre-prepare these and reuse them a different way. And I don't really want to talk about exams here, kind of people want to. Labs, in actual fact, labs is a thing that concerned me a lot because I am involved in engineering education, and I am actually trying to build an international community of people interested in online labs. So if you want to check out bit.ly labs online, feel free to do that. It's a group on LinkedIn. So you can have your labs on campus, of course, and even with distance learners, you can bring them into that. That's what we do all the time. You can get your hands on online simulations. I'd say probably a lot of you are doing that already. Kits can be designed and built and sent out to people. You can design experiments that people can do with household items or things that they can buy down in the local hardware shop. We've actually built rigs that people can access remotely and do certain exercises. Or maybe you can, if you're dealing with distance learners, you can use regional centers, and they may be operated by private training operators. A lot of different ways you can, what would you say, solve the problem of practical work. Okay, so that's the types of content. Where are you going to get this content? Well, the top one there is OER, or Open Education Resources. There's lots of free material out there. The OER is really a movement, really based on Creative Commons, and a lot of materials you find out there have Creative Commons licenses, so you can feel comfortable in using them. But to be honest with you, pointing people to materials that are freely available on the web that haven't bothered to say whether it's creative or not is probably okay too. No one's going to slap you on the wrist for that. There's a lot of published material there, maybe free stuff like the massive open online courses that's sort of formally built and published. It's available free. And there's lots of commercial content you can buy as well. It doesn't tend to be available in specialized areas. Maybe the MOOCs might be. But really, I suppose what I wanted to talk about, and I only have a very short time, is really the homemade, the stuff that you can do yourself. Okay, as I mentioned this at the start of this presentation, it was a locomotion project, an EU project that we pulled together a lot of these ideas, and you can check that out at moocsforall.eu. That's about low-cost approach to building MOOCs, but low-cost approaches to building online courses it's exactly the same, really. Okay, videos. To be honest with you, I think maybe are probably the easiest to develop. Provided you set your expectations low, you can very quickly develop. You can give PowerPoint presentations like this and just capture it and record it. It's always recommended best to keep those short. So if you have longer lectures, you'll always cut them down into 10-minute slots and record them like that. It's not difficult to do. I'm sure in physics you do a lot of work on the board and calculations. Well, you can use graphics tablets and things like that, but I suspect these little visualizers or cameras, document cameras, are probably the handiest. Put a piece of paper in there and write it and record it as you do it. If you're doing lab work, you can do lab videos. So videos are really very useful and easy to make. Okay, so there's your content. Now, if we have this content, and this is more what this presentation is about, how can you reuse this content? How does this make learning flexible? Okay, all I would say is I'm dividing it up into our targeted audiences of distance learners. I've been working in distance learning for nearly 20 years now, but we also have our campus learning learners that could be used. And now I'd like to separate us as a different category, which is younger distance learners. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes, okay? And also we can combine these modes. Okay, so mature distance learners. These are people in the workforce now. They can join a regular online course. The word course is a big ambiguous. We call them modules in Ireland. In America, they call them courses. But they generally join a program and do a series of subjects. But if you build a course, if you build your module, you can make free access to it as well. So it essentially becomes a MOOC. Even if it may not be massive, but it's a free open online course. And people can use that for self-study. And that self-study could be part of programs in your institution, because they could do it for a hobby, but they could do it to prepare themselves for challenge exams. So it could be a cheaper form of learning for some people, that they can prepare for some sort of assessment and get their credits that way and do some of their program that way. Campus learners. So we've created this content. Is it of use to the students who are in front of you? Well, I would say yes, it is. And probably, I think, one of the most powerful, would you say, uses of this and does improve teaching is sort of blending or flip. Because for starters, when you give a class, you really need to give that class year after year. People can just watch it. You can use your time better. You could use your time better to, we'll say in flipped learning, you create pre-recordings, probably give them quizzes or something, just to see if they watched it. It's not a deep assessment. And then you'd meet them in class, knowing that they'd watched it, because they would have had to take the quiz before the class, and you would add classroom activity. You might give them feedback. You mightn't have the classroom activity. You might ask them to submit some sort of an exercise and give them feedback on it. So what you're doing now is you're standing in front of them in class, and you're using that time to give them feedback, which is very valuable to students. Project-based learning, really, in a way, it's a form of flipped learning, which is sort of done on a larger scale, insofar as that why would they have in their whole program? Why would they have any subjects? Why would they have any classes at all? They can just watch all the content online, and rather doing small little activities for the lecturer in those courses they take online, they might just have quizzes or something to make sure that they're familiar with it, and then they do large projects. So you test the lower order learning outcomes with the quizzes, and the other learning outcomes with the projects, the higher order learning outcomes. So maybe that's an option there. Now, what about work placement? That students go out on work placement, which will really be pushed to in higher education. We can do much longer work placements, they get much longer, and they can still keep studying their theory subjects through what you provide. Now, I'm bringing in this idea of younger distance learners, which, to be honest with you, until 6 weeks ago, wasn't really in people's minds. I've been working on developing work-based courses and home-based courses for students sent to college, and suddenly these ideas are much more relevant. But it's much easier for you to do this if you have the content, because basically what you're doing is you have your content and you're building other activities around it. So work-based learners would be, they'd have an agreement, they'll be with employers, they'll study online, they'll get credit for their work, and they can get access to your modules online. So that's a mode of learning. Home-based learners, in a way, the same as work-based learning, except they don't have a job as such. So you might give them projects, and it's not good to have them in their bedroom for 3 or 4 years. So you might give them credit and require them to go out and engage with the community. So these are different, what would you say, modes of learning. But one of the things about it was, once you have your content created, then suddenly this content, you can teach multiple modes simultaneously, because you may not have enough students in any one mode to make it worthwhile. So we can combine the groups, you have your core content, and then you have different activities for the different target groups. Or possibly you can share with people on multiple campuses and with another lecturer on another campus. And maybe in very specialized subjects where there might only be a few subjects who want to do this on campus, you can allow them to do it with a lecturer on another campus, and vice versa. And really that's it. And I suppose if I were to go back to basis, I'd say that if you create simple content, which is not difficult to do, suddenly you're in a more flexible position to teach at a moment's notice people from all different modes, or even teach them simultaneously in the different modes. Thank you very much.